here in what's known as Northern California.
And we're singing hello,
Hello,
to
hello.
you. Hello, Ohio River.
Hello.
And the water protectors who reside along their banks. Hello, hello,
Hello, hello, to all who dare to stand up strong and say, we do believe that with a clean waterway, life can thrive.
Shaping peace together, making peace together.
Oh, lifting up voices and colorful palettes together, doing our best with what we can in all the ways we can, still stay joyfully, bountifully, musically, artfully, woven together in health and harmony.
Hello. River wide and river deep calls me to her side to protect and for her speak. Water, she says, it is time. Vast, vast oceans, bubbling creeks, all are friends of mine. From valley floor to mountain peaks, water, she says, it is time.
They say that history is written by the victors. But how can there be a victor when the war isn't over? The battle has only just begun, and this time, Creator is sending her very best warriors. This time it isn't Indians versus cowboys. This time, it is all the beautiful races of humanity together on the same side. And we are fighting to replace our fear with love. This time, bullets, arrows, cannonballs will not save us. The only weapons that are useful in this battle are the weapons of truth, of faith, and compassion.
So lay down your weapons, I come in peace to be a stand for life. For all things thrive where water is clean. Water, she says, it is time. For all things thrive where water is clean. Water, she says, it is time.
Tonight, we're here to begin the A to Z Impacts of Plastics digital series. We aim to expose the threats and costs to those impacted by ecological devastation and to continue putting forward analysis of industry actions in terms of the interlocking systems of poverty, racism, ecological devastation, and militarism.
We touch plastic more than we touch our loved ones on a day-to-day basis.
From a health standpoint, this is terrible. From an economic standpoint, it's nonsensical. When the demand for plastic is going down and down and down, and we need to keep the fossil fuels in the ground.
Only 9% of plastic ever made has been recycled.
Plastics are one of the most greenhouse gas intensive manufacturing industries out there. And what we're finding with our work is that the air pollution is everywhere. It is across the entire supply chain.
People who live in the shadows of these plants have a 10-year less life expectancy of the average American because by where they live, and they live in the chemical corridor, as we call it, Cancer Alley.
At the end of the day, the climate crisis, as we term it, is a result of white supremacy, colonialism, imperialism, and capitalism. And so any solution that is not resisting and addressing those systems of oppression is not a solution.
I think we all agree that we really need to transition away from this polluting industry, but we don't want to leave workers behind. But we can also put oil and gas workers back to work in plugging old and abandoned wells, which is a huge challenge many states are dealing with now.
We need to look at ways to have a diversified, stable economy that circulates the dollars in the local community more.
We need a cultural shift. We got one on smoking, and the amount of people smoking now has been severely reduced. We need a cultural shift on plastic. We've done this before in America, and globally we can do it again.
The number one thing is to educate and spread awareness, and sometimes that doesn't feel very proactive because you don't feel like you're directly doing something, but it plants seeds that will spread very quickly and eventually will blossom into organized collective actions.
I get hope knowing there's this bigger picture out there that sees the connection between the fracking and these petrochemical manufacturers and the consumerism and the recycling.
Anybody can be part of this movement, and we want everybody to be part of this movement.
Find common ground. Talk to everyone.
Because you never know who can be an ally.
We articulate in our lens of work the intersections of poverty, of climate, of democracy, of systemic racism. All of that is linked, and it forms a vicious nexus which we see manifest in different ways in different communities. But the key is that the solution is that cohesive narrative, recognizing these issues are interlinked, we are interlinked, and our response must be so.
The change must be systemic.
I just feel that so much in my heart that the work that we're doing here is beautiful, beautiful work.
We're talking about how to change our society in a fundamental way.
There's power, on this call, power in these circles.
Hey, good evening all. My name is Peggy Berry and I'm a PhD prepared nurse. My pronouns are she, her. I live on the native indigenous land of the Adena, Erie, Hopewell, Delaware, Miami, Osage, Ottawa, Shawnee, Wyandotte, Miami peoples, and I'm happy to be here. You're kicking off our first one and it's a great day for it. Housekeeping. We are going to have you all muted at this time, but we would love for you to keep your video on so we can see your faces, and we would love to see your reactions. We we would love to see your reactions by going down to the bottom of the screen and hitting the button that says reactions, and just to our speakers, hit the up button, hit the thumbs up button, etc. We will not be creating any breakout rooms this evening. We will be having time for questions over chat halfway through the program, and then a live conversation with our speakers after all the speakers are done. You will be able to put all of your questions in the chat for the speakers at midpoint. So I'm going to turn it over to our next person in line here, and that would be Elise. No, I suppose not. I guess that would be Mary. Mary?
You're muted, Mary.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here as well with these amazing group of people and all of you new A to Z tackling impacts of plastic family and our members that have been with us for the past 2 seasons. Just want to say thank you to our co-sponsors who have done an outstanding job sharing information about this event and supporting us. And we really consider this a family. Because that's what it's going to take to overcome all these issues. So thank you. Then just a little, I have trouble advancing. We're gonna have to escape and then, goodness, there, whoops, no, of course, there we go. So we want to acknowledge that Indigenous people were the first to be impacted by the extraction of natural resources, among other things. And we acknowledge the work that the elders of the past and present are doing on behalf of all people to restore the balance to the earth. We acknowledge the need to continue to do the work to decolonize our lives in word and deed. And then we acknowledge the land we are on was originally the home of many different tribes. And we invite you to put the names of the tribes from your land in the chat. And there's also a resource there. I'll try and move that box if it's in the way. If you don't know, and that there's a resource there that you can use to see that. And it just, I guess it takes a minute for it to advance to the next slide. So just bear with me. Seems like come on. Yeah. Okay, there we go. So some considerations. A to Z tackling impacts of plastic is an experiential space. We welcome your feedback and input during the presentation. We please put your questions in the chat. Due to the large number of participants, we'll be selecting a few relevant questions. Any questions we did not get to can be sent to the speaker. We will provide their contact information at the end of this presentation, and we will stay on for additional 15 minutes to address any additional questions or interest in conversation and networking afterwards. If you would like to continue conversations or would like us to create room for more interaction and discussion on these issues presented to you this evening, please let us know. Our contact information, all slides, and the recording of this program will be shared in a follow-up email. If you stay on for discussion, we ask you to be mindful of the amount of time you're taking so that everyone has the opportunity to ask a question or share in conversation. And thank you. We love you.
Hi, good evening again. I will be your moderator for this evening, and I'm going to let the speakers introduce each other. They will provide 1 to 2 minutes. Alexa will be our first speaker to introduce herself, followed by BJ. and then Paulita.
Thank you, Peggy. My name is Alexis Goldsmith. I am the organizing director at Beyond Plastics, and I basically work with grassroots organizers around the US, coaching them on how to do both legislative and non-legislative campaigns to end plastic pollution. And I have a background in independent journalism. I was the executive producer for the Hudson Mohawk Magazine, which is a community radio news program out of the Sanctuary for Independent Media in Troy, New York. And I also have a garden, and I really just love to grow plants, as you can see, and animals. So I'll pass it over to BJ.
Yeah, thank you, Alexis and Peggy and Mary. And it was nice to see that video again. Of course, I hear my voice and I'm like, oh, anyway. My name is BJ McManama. I am an organizer, campaign organizer with the Indigenous Environmental Network, and just a general worker bee. I've been with IN for going on 18 years now, doesn't seem possible. And through that time, I have gotten a lot of experience in frontline community organizing and just getting to know the people and the issues and just being on the ground and having a personal relationship with Mother Earth, a deeper dive, if you will. So over the years, my campaign work, the educational outreach that I've done is now in this moment kind of intersecting in all of the issues that we're facing right now, whether it be the extractive economy, false solutions, the environment, genetic engineering, geoengineering, those things that we call techno fixes that are absolute cover for the extractive economy to continue what they're doing. I'll touch on a little bit of that tonight, of course. And now I think I said everything. Anyway, I live in West Virginia, Northern West Virginia. Used to be, long time ago, a place where my ancestors lived, the Seneca, and my cousins, the Cherokee, the Shawnee, the Mingo, the Lenape, and a lot of other peoples, communities, tribes that have been summarily erased by the settler colonialism and that paradigm. So I will now pass it on to Paulita.
Thank you, BJ. Hi, everybody. I'm Paulita Bennett Martin. I'm the daughter of a Maya Belizean woman and an Irish American diver and explorer who met in Central America in the 1960s. These roots, I like to think of them like the roots of a mangrove tree. They've been strong and a part of the strength that I needed to find my career, my work, and to support my passion. I'm also the federal policy manager for Oceana, overseeing our plastics portfolio here in the United States. Since about 2012, I've been working in research and advocacy and alliance building to protect marine resources and waterfront culture in coastal Georgia and through the Caribbean. And before joining Oceana, I oversaw research on lionfish in the Virgin Islands, and I've managed oral histories for the Ogeechee Riverkeeper. I spent years mapping marine plastics before I came into the advocacy angle of this work as a science researcher. And then I campaigned for cleanups across Belize with Oceana and partner organizations, as well as the government and numerous village and town councils. In 2015, I took this message of plastic pollution to Atlanta, where I partnered with many local people there to create an international symposium addressing plastic pollution, which caught the attention of the local government in Atlanta, Georgia. And since then, they have passed local policy to protect their community from single-use plastics. In addition to my role with Oceana, which I am very excited about, I also serve on the National Marine Sanctuary Advisory Council for Gray's Reef, which is here off the coast of Georgia. I've worked with Sylvia Earle's Mission Blue to create the Blake Plateau and Georgia Continental Shelf Hope Spot, In 2018, I founded Whale Week Savannah, and in 2021, I started up the Sea of Life initiative in the Caribbean. I'd like to say thank you all for having me here, and I look forward to learning and to sharing.
Thank you so very much, everybody, for introducing yourselves. I would like to now turn it over to Alexis. Actually, I had to unplug my Alexa so that we wouldn't have an interruption this evening. So Alexis, I'm turning it back over to you.
Thank you, Peggy, and welcome everyone. I am here to talk to you about a report that Beyond Plastics put out last October, looking at the impacts of plastic production, use, and disposal in the United States on climate. And I'm going to try and keep my presentation brief. So again, I'm with Beyond Plastics. My email is on the slide. I'll put it in the chat as well. Feel free to reach out to me, especially if you're doing any grassroots organizing. I would love to connect with you. You can also follow us on social media. You can simply look up Beyond Plastics on all the major platforms or go to our website at beyondplastics.org. There's a link to sign up for our email list. So before I get into my presentation, I just wanted to remind everyone here that we have the power to make change in this world. A lot of people now know who Greta Tunberg is. She's the Swedish high school student who started School Strikes for Future. And that's where students around the world would walk out of schools in protest of government inaction on climate change. There are many young climate and environmental justice activists in the United States and around the world. I was honored to meet Xiuhtezcatl Martinez at an event at the Sanctuary for Independent Media. Xiuhtezcatl was the youth director of Earth Guardians and has spoken before the United Nations General Assembly in English, Spanish, and his native language of Nahuatl on the effects of fossil fuels on Indigenous and marginalized communities. So I just share these two young activists at the beginning because they really inspire me. And I feel that if they have the strength to do this, then I certainly can do this too. So we're talking about plastics and in particular, the connection between plastics, climate change, and environmental justice. There's certainly the waste and disposal issue of plastics, but I won't have time to get into that tonight. This issue affects every single person on Earth, if not all living creatures. So I'm going to go over some very important information in the next half hour, and throughout the presentations, I hope that you all just refrain from multitasking and stay present with us as we discuss this important and heavy topic. So 99% of plastics today are manufactured from fossil fuels. And in the United States, the majority of those plastics are manufactured from ethane, which is a cheap byproduct of hydraulic fracturing. As I said, last October, Beyond Plastics released a report that examined the climate impacts of the production, use, and disposal of plastics in the United States. On the cover of this report is Sharon Levine, who is a member of Rise St. James in St. James Parish, Louisiana. She is in a fence line community of this very issue. And this report I'm going to talk about built upon a 2019 report from the Center for International Environmental Law called Plastics and Climate Change. So our report, The New Coal, found that in 2020, US plastics released 232 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. That's the same emissions as 116 average 500 megawatt coal-fired power plants. At least 42 plastics facilities have opened since 2019, are under construction, or are in the permitting process. And if these facilities become fully operational, these new plastic plants could release an additional 55 million tons of greenhouse gases, the equivalent of another 27 average-sized coal plants. This report found, not surprisingly, more like backing up the fact that the production of plastic is a matter of environmental injustice. And this report also added further evidence that environmental racism is a serious issue in the United States. So plastics can be made from oil, coal, and gas, but as I said, most plastics in the United States are manufactured from cheap ethane gas that comes from hydraulic fracturing. Fracking is a method of extracting shale gas from deep underground deposits, and this process has a high risk of contaminating drinking water. Fracking has boomed in the United States in the past 2 decades, resulting in a gas glut, meaning that there is more gas than domestic markets can absorb. So plastics manufacturing from ethane provides a new revenue source for oil and gas companies. To frack a well, the gas company pumps millions of gallons of water mixed with chemicals and sand deep underground, fracturing the bedrock so the pockets of gas can be extracted. This slurry of water, chemicals, sand, and gas come back out of the well, along with radon and naturally occurring radioactive isotopes from deep underground. It's from this slurry that the ethane gas is separated along with waste products. This is a still from the movie Gasland, which, believe it or not, was released in 2010. And in the past decade and 2 years, we better understand the impacts of fracking, but not much has changed from a regulatory standpoint. In the year 2000, in the US, there were about 25 fracking wells. Now there are more than 1.7 million. At the end of their life, the wells are often abandoned and continue to leak methane. So methane is very important through this whole process because it is more than 80 times more effective than carbon dioxide at trapping heat in the atmosphere. So in our report, The New Coal, we looked at emissions from fracking in order to produce plastics. So this key, which you'll see in other slides, shows the equivalent yearly emissions in coal-fired power plants. So each shaded symbol represents 2 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, which is the yearly emissions from one coal-fired power plant. Each unshaded symbol shows the potential emissions from expansion of infrastructure by 2025. So in the year 2020, fracking for plastics, not even fracking for other types of gas, released the equivalent emissions of 18 coal-fired power plants with the potential for an additional 6 million tons of emissions by 2025. And I mentioned that the fracking wells bring up naturally occurring radioactive isotopes. The radioactivity accumulates in wastewater and in the oil and gas equipment. So this is a screenshot from a groundbreaking article published in Rolling Stone in 2019 that details just how scandalously unregulated radioactive fracking waste is. The author, Justin Noble, is currently writing a book on this topic, but if you haven't read this article, I really recommend it. So once the ethane is separated from fracked gas, it is transported with pipelines, and this stage of plastic production also releases emissions. There are more than 3 million miles of oil and gas pipelines in the United States, with more projects proposed each year. And not all pipelines are meant to transport energy. This is a photo of the Mariner East 2 pipeline that goes across Pennsylvania towards the East Coast. This pipeline was built to send ethane gas from Pennsylvania and Ohio overseas to be made into plastics. The sheer length of pipelines in the United States continues to grow, contributing to the ongoing expansion of fossil fuel infrastructure. We have seen some divestments from major pipelines like the infamous Keystone XL, but unfortunately Enbridge announced that Line 3 was finished, although the Anishinaabe people continue to resist it. And we're also seeing continued resistance to the Mountain Valley pipeline that runs through Appalachia. Oh, I'm sorry, I wanted to say, on the left is Winona LaDuke, an Anishinaabe Indigenous leader who, like many Indigenous people, are often unseen by corporate news media. Winona LaDuke has dedicated her life to advocating for Indigenous control of their homelands, natural resources, and cultural practices. Winona LaDuke was arrested along with more than 600 Indigenous people and their allies defending the Anishinaabe land from Line 3. Finally, the ethane, after it goes through the pipelines and extracted from the ground, reaches a plastic factory, which is called an ethane cracker. This is where a huge majority of emissions come from. The ethane gas, along with chemicals called plasticizers, are manufactured into polyethylene plastics using high heat. The market has been filled with cheap single-use plastics, in part because of the fracking boom. The ethane is really driving this rather than demand. And this type of manufacturing infrastructure is rapidly expanding in the United States. About 2 weeks ago, I took this photo. Thank you, Dr. Clifford Lau. I think he's on the call here for taking me to this overlook. This is the Shell cracker in Beaver County, Pennsylvania. It's the first ethane cracker in Appalachia, with more projects proposed. Other plastics feedstock manufacturing, so not just polyethylene, but other types of plastic, PVC, and those different resins contribute the equivalent of 16 coal-fired power plants, with the potential to add an additional 10 million tons by 2025. And other climate impacts from plastics come from producing the tens of thousands of chemicals that are added to plastics, and from exports and imports. As you saw earlier, both the raw fossil fuels to make plastics are exported, as well as the nurdles, which are the tiny plastic pellets that come from ethane crackers and plastic products. So all these impacts happen before plastic reaches a consumer, which I find astounding. And I also love this picture because it really just shows how greenwashed plastic has become in our world. Did you know that Coca-Cola produces 200,000 plastic bottles every minute? Our report also looked at the impacts of foamed plastic insulation. So this is a public service announcement. Foamed plastic insulation can off-gas for more than 50 years. So if you're building or insulating your house, I recommend avoiding this type of insulation. Try and use fiberglass, which can be made from recycled glass. And we have known for years now that recycling is not a solution to the issue of plastic waste. Less than 9% of all plastic ever produced has been recycled, and all plastic is eventually disposed of. So now the ACC, the American Chemistry Council, and their industry allies are promoting something called chemical recycling that is supposedly the golden ticket to fix recycling. But the truth about chemical recycling is that it really is just burning plastic. It does not turn plastic into new products. It simply burns it or turns it into fuel to be burned. So I want to make everyone aware of that. The American Chemistry Council is pushing for state bills across the United States to encourage chemical recycling, also called advanced recycling. And then finally, the final stage of plastics that we looked at in our report is plastic pollution in our water. So plastic pollution in the water interferes with the ocean's ability to act as a carbon sink. And plastic also releases greenhouse gases as it breaks down into microplastics. So what is the petrochemical industry thinking? I mean, all of this sounds pretty antithetical to a livable, healthy planet. But as the world reckons with climate change and green energy and electric vehicles become more common, more necessary, the fossil fuel industry is looking for new markets to continue justifying extraction. And one of those markets is plastic, especially single-use plastics. Globally, our report just looked at plastic in the United States, but globally, the greenhouse gas impacts of plastic, if they were a country, would be the 5th largest country in the world. Plastics emit more greenhouse gases than the entire continent of Africa. This is a serious, just more evidence of the environmental injustice that is plastic. And the bottom line here is that plastic infrastructure threatens our chances of having a livable planet in the future. From our report, these are the 18 communities in the United States where 90% of the emissions from plastics are being released. I believe that something that contributes to the lesser known impacts of plastic on climate change are just the fact that this happens in so few places, that it's not visible to everybody, but it certainly impacts the communities where this happens. This photo is of Rise St. James. As I mentioned, Sharon Levine of Rise St. James is on the cover of our report. They are a community-based environmental justice group in St. James Parish, Louisiana, and they are fighting Formosa Plastics, a Taiwan-based company that intends to build the largest plastics manufacturing plant in the United States on 2,500 acres in St. James, in an historically Black community that is already affected by heavy industry. And not only is the Formosa site located on hundreds of acres of imperiled wetlands, but it is a former sugarcane plantation, and it contains the graves of people who were enslaved. And those people who are buried there are the ancestors of people who are still alive today, who want to preserve their memory and don't want to see their graves desecrated by a petrochemical plant. So this photo is very meaningful. This photo is of Rise St. James honoring the graves during a Juneteenth celebration. And the production of plastics contributes largely to environmental injustice and environmental racism. The infrastructure is cited in sacrifice communities. That's not my terminology, but basically they are deemed lesser, or the industry considers them to be that sacrifice zone. And this also contributes to disproportionate health problems and a lower quality of life, more mental stress, more anxiety, stress worrying about your family. The extraction and productions of, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, and I could go on and on about this, but the international scientific community agrees that we have less than 10 years to avert the worst consequences of climate change. But there is a strong argument that inequality and environmental racism contribute more to climate change than population. We cannot recycle our way out of this problem while plastic production continues to increase. Plastic recycling does not work. It will never work as a solution to this waste crisis. And the myth of recycling has actually contributed to international environmental and social justice issues of waste colonialism. For decades, wealthy countries have shipped plastic waste and dumped it into countries that were economically disadvantaged, leading to open landfills and incinerators that compound existing inequalities. And I always include this image as a contrast. This is the American Chemistry Council that is advocating for these policies and these facilities. This is in a press conference they held on the day that the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act of 2021 was introduced, telling Congress to not mess with chemical recycling and let them keep burning plastics. I'm sure nobody in that photo lives in a fence line community. I reference Beyond Plastic, beyond, sorry, I'm getting lost. I think it's important to underscore that this infrastructure is being built, is growing. And this figure is from a 2019 report from Food and Water Watch that details the expansion of fracking infrastructure and plastics infrastructure in the United States. I really recommend reading this report. It's about 30 pages long, and also just follow Food and Water Watch because they are a great organization and a fantastic resource. So again, this is why we're doing this work, to have a safe and livable environment for ourselves, for future generations, for all life on Earth. We are too big to fail. So with that all being said, I'm going to share my action, and you'll get this in the follow-up email, but Beyond Plastics has set up an action where you can write to the Biden administration, including the Army Corps of Engineers and the White House Council on Environmental Quality, urging them to stop granting new permits for petrochemical facilities. And that action is at that link, which you can either write it down or you're also going to get it later in the program. So thank you for listening to me. I will take questions later, but I really look forward to hearing from BJ.
Thank you so very much, Alexis. And now BJ, my friend, is going to go into what she is going to talk about.
Thank you very much, Peggy, and thank you very much, Alexis. Excellent, excellent presentation. You're a hard act to follow. I am going to share my screen now so that I can kind of stay on point and not deviate too much, which I am absolutely guilty of doing from time to time. So not to contradict our title of our webinar, or even to, I don't know, take attention away from, the air pollution that Alexis, so it's a lot of detail and well presented. Thank you very much. So, I've been thinking a lot about these kind of things lately. As activists, as frontline communities, we tend to look at the symptoms, at the things that are most in our face, right? That, but we need to look more at the root causes. And of course, everything that Alexis presented and others tonight are part of the root causes, but plastic is just one cause for pollution. And you'll also see my email here. I think it was also put in the chat. So tonight I'm going to look at water. So as I was putting all this together, I started off on a total another tangent, and I thought I'd keep this because the oil and gas industry, the exponential expansion of the extractive economy that we found ourselves in, is at the root cause of all this. It's the feedstock for plastics. It's feedstock for chemicals too, like agriculture chemicals. There's not all of them, but a good many of them. Also fertilizer. The fertilizer that we buy, the commercial kinds of fertilizer, are petrochemical based. They're also doing a lot of damage to our relatives under the ground, under the surface. And that's part of the biodiversity that we must have to live. So I just kind of listed these things, but putting out pipelines, that destroys the earth, which has absolute impact on our climate. The compressor stations, the LNG processing facilities, the export of our oil and gas to other countries so that these corporations can make unbelievable profits, while also saying that we don't have enough here, right? And it's always to the highest bidder. So all of the above, the air, has something to do with the air, the water, the pollution of our land. But tonight, I'm going to, again, concentrate more on the water, because water is life. It is our rally cry. It is the truth. It is unmistakable, but it's life for all life, all lives, everywhere. So to begin, it was this afternoon, because I always seem to be finishing up things at the last minute. But I started to look at how much water fracking actually destroys, pollutes, and not just pollutes so that we have to, we have a water filter on our faucet or anything. I mean, pollutes to the point that it is poison, it is deadly. So that this produced water, after it comes back up from these frack wells, millions of gallons, it is full of these deadly chemicals and sand and radioactivity. And so we have to do something with it. And we can talk about that later. But just simply it's put into open ponds because evaporation, so-called, supposed to do something with it. I don't know. And the most popular, or the most of the ways that they do this, is they inject this water back down into the earth. And as we know, there's nothing constant or nothing permanent on the planet. And eventually this produced water with all of its chemicals will seep back up into our aquifers. And I'm not sure exactly when, but it will happen. And we'll have to deal with those consequences. So looking at this, it was, it's kind of hard to find some of this, but our friends at Frack, and if you're not familiar with fracktracker.org, please look them up. They are like the data kings and queens. They also have images of all sorts of extractive economy, the frack wells, the pipelines, the damage that is done across the country, anywhere a pipeline is being installed. But anyway, every well that's fracked, and some wells are fracked more than once, takes up to, or beginning with, about 4 million gallons of water and as much as 9.7 or almost 10 million gallons of water. So then I looked up how many wells in the United States. And in 2015, Frack Tracker told us, and it's 1,700, or yeah, I mean, 1,666,715 active wells that they've accounted for it. So I used 6 million as an approximate number to multiply by the number of wells. And I had to look at it a couple times. I thought maybe I'd hit the wrong button on my calculator because I'm math challenged. I can't do that in my head. I came up with 10 trillion gallons of water that is now, it's poison. It can't be used for anything. And so you can look this up. I gave you the link here. And so then my next question was, well, surely we don't start, with 1 million, almost 1,700,000 wells every year. So I found on another website, Google is my friend, that between 2019 and 2020, and they give it by months, the number of new established wells, because wells do run out. So it's kind of a rotation thing. So, and then looking at the most recent figures, it is under 1.7 million, but it's pretty close. So if we take these figures and of each month or whatever number it is on this chart by the 6 million gallons of water, we can see exactly or approximately how much it is used. So then I asked myself, well, do they reuse this water? And on the EPA's website, I found a lot of data about fracking, but it shows here in this, I can't see it because my window is over here. Yes, it shows that approximately 5% is reused, and the rest of it is all water that they've taken. A lot of it's surface water. Some of it is they buy it for pennies on the dollar, a lot less than we pay for it, from public water systems. So that's a huge problem. So as we see, water is not an infinite source on our planet. It is finite. It's kind of hard to think about it like that because, we've got the oceans, but clean water, potable water, water that is necessary for all life. What is it, 3 days we can go without water before dying? So we haven't really factored in the water pollution that comes from the plastic production, or chemicals that are produced and used, or the trash that we put in our oceans, our rivers and streams. And it is all that the fracking, the extractive economy it's at the root of all of this. So we've rendered a number of our sources, aquifers, surface water, rivers, streams, lakes, which once was potable, which we could drink. In fact, there's stories back when the Europeans first came here, and they were absolutely taken back by the fact that we could drink straight from the rivers, straight from the lakes, and it was fresh and it was clean, it was healthy, because long ago they had fouled almost all of their sources of water. And why people in Europe, even children, drink fermented beverages, either beer or wine, because they had to do that in order to not die when they drank the water. So, and fracking and plastics, petrochemicals, all of it doesn't take into account what I've already said about the rainwater, because everything that we put out into the atmosphere or even sprayed on industrial agriculture operations, we've found that pesticides, herbicides are taken up in the system of hydrology. It evaporates and it gets up into the clouds and it comes back down as elements in our rainwater. And now what Alexis showed us was the microparticles in the oceans. There's even microplastic in our air. There's a meant that everyone consumes a credit card size piece of plastic when you add up all the microparticles. And I can't remember, I think it was a week, or maybe it was a month, or maybe it was a year. I can't remember. It's still horrifying. Did somebody say something?
It's a week.
Thank you. I thought that was a little outrageous, but yeah, that's what I thought it was. And all of this falls on our forests and our grasslands, on ourselves. I like to hang my clothes out to dry. It's something I like to do, but that kind of stuff falls on it gets on our clothes, and it's just everywhere. It's insidious, and it's pervasive, and it is horrible to think about this. And all of what I'm talking about can be broken down into different layers, and we can have other discussions about this, because this is absolutely top level. This isn't anywhere near the detail that we need to talk about. And it is part of all of our lives. And so I hope some of this is helpful. But I was also thinking that how ironic it was that people around the world, I've spent time in South America and in Mexico, and everywhere I go, there's cases and truckloads of water bottles because we're not supposed to drink the local water. So how ironic it is, the one single-use plastic item is the reason that we have to drink out of this plastic water bottle. I'm always, in my eternal search for irony, I am never disappointed. And the industry is insidious. They have separated us for probably a century or more, step by step, because we don't create the market. Our demands, what we need, doesn't create the market. The market dictates what is there for us. And as activists, as people understand more about what's happening with the fracking and the petrochemicals and all that, they're fighting back. And this booklet right here, this Natural Gas, Your Invisible Friend, was distributed to my granddaughter's school. She was in 3rd grade. It's an activity book that tells them all the really special things that natural gas does for us. Alas, I believe this is more for the parents than it was the children. And that's sad. But here in West Virginia, being in the heart of the Marcellus Shale plays, it's an issue. And so they want to make sure that nobody fights back, because most of West Virginia is one of those communities, or is filled with communities who don't have the resources to fight this extractive economy. And when something goes wrong, because it always goes wrong, when cancers show up, when cancer clusters or diseases, or the water becomes totally undrinkable, or we go to fish in our favorite lake or stream and all we find is fish with, belly up, we have no recourse. We can't fight it. It's changing, but that's an element of this too. And as I was doing some other research the other day on an article, and one of those articles I'm going to tell you about that, is this little ad on the side. Oops, I went the wrong way. And so, they're marketing to each other, right? We've got to bring the businesses in, and, we've got to rub each other, pat each other on the back and make new business plans. And then the second one, the hydrogen and carbon capture conference. This is, if you have not heard about it, I suppose most people have heard about carbon capture, because it is now being used as absolute cover for the oil and gas industry, coal industry, any industry that puts out GHGs. This is their cover. So we don't have to worry about it anymore, because look, we're going to capture the carbon, and then we're going to use the carbon for all these wonderful things. But it also comes along with pipelines and danger, a lot of danger. That's another thing that we really, really need to get into and talk about, is the dangers of piping liquid CO2 from place to place for different products, different reasons. One of the reasons is to shoot it back down into frac wells that have pretty much quit producing the oil or gas. Actually, it's just for oil, so that they can get the last bits and bubbles of the oil out of the shale layer. So as I keep looking around, and I do subscribe to some of the industry publications, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. This was just released day before yesterday, but Jennifer Granholm, who's been the cheerleader for carbon capture and some of the fault solutions, hydrogen, and there's several of them. We can put carbon capture on a coal-fired power plant, and it is now labeled as clean energy production. This was a paragraph from this article that's talking about how fossil energy has done more for civilization than anything else. And so I copied this and put it in a Google Doc so people can read it. Here is the link. And if I have not finished a thought or something isn't clear, please ask me. I do that sometimes. I think faster than I can actually say things, or the people in my head start confusing me. Anyway, so this is the article. They're talking about, where, wind and solar are a big lie, and, here we go. And the yellow blocks that I had on the page before, there's probably about 6 to maybe a dozen of those yellow blocks that are quotes from different people in different countries, or corporate CEOs or whatever. It's real insidious. So yes, plastic is the scourge of the consumer market. And like I said before, we don't drive the market dictates to us what we will have. So, but we also have a responsibility to do whatever we can to hold these people responsible, the ones who got us here, the ones who are responsible. And always remember too, that the system that got us here, this capitalist system, this out of control, consumer-based consumption, increase the GDP year after year after year, they're the ones that need to be held accountable. And to do that, we need to speak up. We need to call, write, email, which is kind of a segue for the next speaker. And you don't have to preach to your family and friends and even your strangers. I mean, I've said things to the checkout lady at my grocery store. But we do need to do this. We need to take every opportunity that we can, because this is for the 7th generation. This is for everyone. This is for our future, our grandchildren's future. And I hope that I've made some sense, but I will leave you with this. We are a part of, not apart from. So we need to understand that the air pollution that Alexis was talking about, what I'm talking about with water and all the other pollution, that whatever is happening on the planet, it's going to affect everything and everyone. And we are not immune. We do not live in bubbles. We do not live in isolation. So just remember, we're a part of, not apart from. I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, BJ. And we do have some questions that are coming in. I do want to remind everybody that we are asking you to put the questions in the chat, and we will be asking our past speakers here these questions. So for Alexis, how many plastic projects are being funded by the infrastructure bill? This question was asked by Lori Zuner.
That's a great question. I don't have an exact number for plastics, but the latest number I heard was given to me by an organizer at Food and Water Watch named Jim Walsh, who has been working on carbon capture projects and briefing congressional representatives on why carbon capture is not a solution. And his estimates were that $25 billion were included in the infrastructure bill for petrochemical projects, in particular for a petrochemical hub in Appalachia.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, BJ, can some plastics be replaced by hemp? This was asked by Christine Popowski.
Yes, absolutely. There are, hemp can do a lot of things. Hemp can be used for construction, hempcrete. Hemp, 4 acres or 1 acre of hemp replaces 4 acres of trees for paper, pulp. So yes, I will caution people though, because there's a lot of talk about bioplastics or plant-based plastics. They're not as healthy, they're not recyclable, they're not as, they don't really biodegrade that quickly. There's different formulas. But when we think about starting to grow a feedstock for single use, we've got to ask ourselves, when did industry or corporations show any restraint in how they're producing things? So it's kind of like the ethanol issue, growing corn for fuel instead of growing corn or actual food, not just commodities, because it's taking up the land, it's taking up the resources. And so we've got to make that choice. It's just a cautionary tale right now. There are applications for plastics that will be necessary in this new economy, in this sustainable, this just transition. Our responsibility, everything we do has consequences. Everything we do everything we need takes something from the earth. And so our responsibility is to make the choices that take the least or do the least damage, because, you know, we take it, right? And find ways to replace it, to give back. As they say, walk gently on this earth and leave a better place for those who follow. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to give this to both our speakers. So how do we stop fracking? Is there even possible consideration for doing that given their position in the economy? And Rich Park asked that question.
Yeah, that's a hard one. You know, there's a big elephant in the room with the work that we do, activists. We're calling to, you know, build back fossil free, keep it in the ground, which we definitely need to work toward as fast as we can. I think the issue more or less is not increasing, exponentially expanding fracking. And what is it? Alexis probably has the numbers, I'll leave it to her. But the plastic industry, actually when the shell cracker started to be built and all that, industry documentation said that they'll need 1,500 new wells every year to feed the plastics industry, to feed the cracker plants. I may be wrong. We've got enough under our feet now. If we don't export it, if we don't use it for plastics exponentially like we are now, there's enough to last us until we can transition. We just need to do it safe, not hurry, etc. Eventually, yes. Short answer, yes, we can get away from it.
Okay, Alexis?
Yes, I think we can get away from fracking. BJ's absolutely right. The cracker plants are being built to continue fracking, to perpetuate fracking. What is needed to end fracking is political will. And we need to end corruption of our political system. The fracking companies are like the mafia. Like they have captured regulatory agencies, and they have been able to pay their way out of things. I mean, look at Steve Donziger, the lawyer who represented 30,000 indigenous farmers in the Amazon against Shell and won, and he's being persecuted. So this is a brave fight to put ourselves out there like this against, you know, they have seemingly endless resources. But I always remind myself that what they don't have is the truth. And we have the truth on our side, and we have to not be afraid to speak up and say, it's time to ban fracking. It's time to end the extraction of fossil fuels and keep it in the ground.
Okay, so this is from Gail Murray. What proactive action can be suggested to ardent recyclers who believe that plastic can be recycled? Have them sign a petition?
I think you should support the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, which our wonderful colleague Paulita is going to get into. That act really addresses a lot of those issues, and you'll learn more in Paulita's presentation.
Okay. Then another one that comes from Aloni, and that is, how do we hold corrupt criminals accountable for the damage that they're, and I'm going to add, to the damage that they have done in the past and they're presently doing to our environment and to our health? BJ, I'm going to let you start with that and then go to Alexis.
Now, what was that again? I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last of it.
How do we hold corrupt criminals accountable, given what they've done to our environment and our health?
Kind of what we're doing tonight too, learning the facts, learning where things are coming from, what's the cause. We need to talk to people. Right now, it's the fight on voting rights because they're afraid. You know, these politicians, they're not doing anything for us. In fact, they're doing it exactly the opposite. They're promoting carbon capture, which if we did absolutely nothing, it would be better than if we were going to do carbon capture, because it also takes energy and resources, and we need to, I think, number one, we have to get rid of Citizens United, the Supreme Court ruling that gave corporations the power of self, of personhood.
Okay.
Then I think we can get going. But yeah, just keep talking to people. It's, we can.
You know, what we have found with PFAS even is that even with the movie out on Dark Waters, they don't know, of the general population doesn't know about PFAS in our water. So the more we educate, the more we put out these things and get people, I mean, we've had over 200 people on this call, all right? The more we educate, the better we are with this. So thank you very much. Let's see if I can, how can we support fence line communities and organizations? How can we support the Indigenous Environmental Network with this effort?
Sign up for our newsletters, watch our social media for different presentations like this one. We try to educate everyone about the false solutions. I'll make sure everybody gets the link to Hoodwinked in the Hothouse, which is a booklet on all the false solutions. It's a place to start. We don't ask for donations, but if you are able to donate, we do have a link for that. That does help. It does help our frontline communities. But other than that, it's just keep sharing things, keep talking to people. And above all, keep talking to your representatives, to your senators, local, state, federal, just bombard them. I mean, I'm surprised Manchin's office hasn't put a block on my numbers.
That is wonderful. And you know, we are at a point where we need to transition to Paulita, because she is going to have some very good information for you. And I think this is what we need to we need to do. Paulita, you're up. As we move things around. There we go.
My computer is sticking just a little bit, so let me get this going for you guys. Second. Okay. Just making sure that everybody can see this. We should be good, right?
We can see it.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you. That was a great bit of information, not a bit, but a lot of information that we got. And I think it leaves a lot of folks coming up with similar questions about what you can do to help with this issue. So let me start off by, again, pointing out that I am with Oceana and give you a little bit of background about us. So Oceana is the world's largest organization focused solely on ocean conservation policy to restore and protect oceans. Right now, we work in 8 nations and countries all across the European Union as well. And we're a science-centered organization. So each one of our campaigns has a scientist working on it to get us the most up-to-date information. Since 2001, when we started, Oceana has successfully protected nearly 4 million square miles of ocean, and we're not finished yet. I have the great honor of being part of one of Oceana's newest and most exciting campaigns launched about 2 years ago. We work to tackle the issue of plastic pollution through the ocean's lens. The ocean for me, as it may be for many of you on this call right now, is the most bountiful and beautiful place on the planet. It feeds me in more ways than one. However, there's a big plastic problem. One of the things that we always point to is currently we know that about 33 billion pounds of plastics enters the ocean every year. That would look like you sitting on a beach, one of those moments that we look forward to all year long, and having 2 garbage trucks pull up next to you and dump plastic into the ocean. So beyond the oceans, we understand that plastics impacts our neighborhood streets, our rivers, even our national parks. And as many people, as the speakers pointed out and people in the chat are pointing out, plastics are they're being found through many different facets of our life. And so this issue stretches way beyond the ocean. So we're very connected to a wonderful global coalition called Break Free from Plastic. And that's also who I'm here to represent today as one of the members of Break Free from Plastic, Oceana is. One of the key things that we work on, that we advocate for, is the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. So I know earlier that Alexis mentioned just focus on the presentation, but I'm actually going to ask you in a moment to get your phone ready so that we can reach out and actually drive calls to these US Senate offices to support the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. So the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act does address the issue of plastics sort of from the point of extraction all the way through to the point of when it becomes litter. I think a lot of people look at the issues of plastic pollution when it becomes litter, when it's already in the waterways, when it's already on your community street. But the Break Free from Plastic Pollution actually goes to address this issue from producer responsibility. There's provisions in this bill that would require producers of certain products, certain single-use packaging, to be responsible for the waste generated from their products. It also makes producers invest in the US domestic recycling and composting infrastructure. So there are many ways that this goes to what's considered extended producer responsibility. Another section of the bill works to create nationwide beverage container refunds. Some of us are already familiar with bottle deposit and bottle return programs, and that bill includes a provision about that. It also looks at source reduction and phase out of top polluting products, right? So right now, in the global cleanup data that we're seeing, there are regular items that turn up in those cleanup data sets every year. And so some of those things are like plastic carryout bags, drinkware, single-use foodware, and more. The bill also covers a carryout bag fee. So this piece of the legislation would impose a fee on the distribution of carryout bags. That's already occurring in some states, and it's also already occurring in some cities and counties. So this is expanding, this is building, this bill actually builds off of what local people in local communities are already doing and just tries to set a national bar for how we protect communities from plastic pollution. The bill also includes a measure for minimum recycled content. It standardizes recycling and composting so that we have a standard all across our country. Other pieces of this bill also address the infrastructure and production of single-use plastics, placing a temporary pause on any build out of new infrastructure. This also gets to that piece of frontline or environmental justice communities and how we prevent any further pollution coming into those areas. And it also addresses the US role on a global scale. It prevents the US from being able to ship out our single-use plastic waste to other nations that don't have the infrastructure in place to take care of these materials, right? And so with that being said, we will send out a toolkit at the end of this event with some of this information. However, what we can do right now is we can actually call our US senators and we can ask them to sign on to the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. So in the chat bar right now, someone is dropping the information that you will need. Step one second, I'm trying to move the slide for you. If you can see here, step one is check to see if your US Senator is a co-sponsor. We're gonna drop that in the chat right now. I'm not sure, I think it's Alyssa that's dropping it in for us. Check that out. If your senator is not currently on that list, that means they are not a co-sponsor. And if they are on that list, then it's a great time to call them and thank them too. They need to hear from us. They need to know that we like what they're doing. They need to hear from us when we want them to do something else. Step 2, use the link that's about to get dropped in the chat. All you have to do is type in your zip code and it will give you the phone number to both of your US senators. Right now, their offices are going to be closed. So when you call the office, you'll be leaving this 10-second voicemail that says that you want your US senator to co-sponsor the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. It's S984, okay? You're also going to use a script. So we have one here for you. It's also being dropped in the chat along with a toolkit. So here's that script. It's super simple. Hi, my name is, I live in, or I am a business owner in this city and state, and I am calling to ask Senator Awesome Pants to co-sponsor the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. The bill number is S984. Go ahead and stick in a sentence about why you care about this issue. Always bring in your personal statement about this. Tell them what the bill does really quickly, right? Make the message short. And when you do this, if you would, go in the chat and drop in there what state that you're calling your senator in and which senator you reached out to, because we'd love to see whose offices are going to get pinged with this message. And this works. We've done phone banks before to a more extensive degree. And we just saw our Georgia State's US Georgia Senator Ossoff sign on to this bill recently after a phone bank session. So this is one step that you can take. 15 seconds of your time to leave a voicemail. You can count on the fact that nobody's going to answer your call. However, you can also count on this. Working so closely with congressional staffers every day, the one thing that they always remind me of is get those phone calls in. Our boss makes decisions when he hears from us that he's getting phone calls from his constituents. It could be 5 phone calls to an office that makes all the difference to push someone over the edge. So I'm going to stop there and give everybody a couple minutes to make these phone calls. And if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. And if anyone's seeing those questions before I am, please call them out to me. Happy to answer any questions on this.
Yeah, we have all of the info in the chat. I've gotten a few direct messages that I've responded to.
I see someone mentioned Senator Portman. Great to reach out. Senator Portman's been hearing from a lot of the organizations recently. So yes, keep pushing. Oh, and Senator Brown definitely needs to hear from us.
Paulita, while they're doing some of their calling, I have some questions for you. Like, how much plastic is making it into the ocean currently?
Yeah, it's a great question. So every year, 33 billion pounds of plastics wash into the ocean. And so I know I made that unusual example, but it's basically the equivalent of 2 garbage trucks every minute pulling up next to you and dumping straight into the ocean.
Oh,
and
my
we don't
gosh.
see this getting any better.
No, my gosh, that's horrible. Given what we've learned about the impacts of plastic pollution, are companies slowing down the production and finding new alternatives?
That's an interesting question. So no, part of the answer is no, and part of it is yes. The plastics industry expects the annual production will more than triple by 2050. So we are just moving forward in plastic production in a geometric pattern. It's just up, up, up. And so the way we see it is as the production of more single-use plastics increases, so will the amount of the single-use plastic litter that's entering the ocean. And right now, the US plays a very significant role in the global plastic pollution problem because we're generating more of this single-use plastic litter than any other country in the world. But at the same time, the yes part of that question is that, yes, there are alternatives to single-use plastics. There are approaches, material technology, reusable products. There are all sorts of options out there that are not single-use plastics. And those are the businesses that we need to scale up and work with and support those more sustainable approaches to business.
Great, thank you so much.
Nice. I think someone called your Florida senators. Thank you. I'm sure they'll love your message.
Fantastic.
Thank you, guys. This was a lot of fun getting together with all of you. Appreciate your hard work and your participation.
Mary, we need you to talk about follow-ups.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the stop share, and I'll be right with everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paulita. Thank you so much for bringing a live action that we can do together, and those are really effective. So, all right, just one sec. There we go. All right, so we heard from the speakers. We've done some live actions, and now we just kind of want to wrap things up here. And like we said, we will be sending a follow-up email with the recording, with all the notes from the presenters, all the information. And you know, we encourage you to interact and keep just keep communicating, because that's how we win, is when we all come together. So stay tuned for more information about our next event in the series, A to Z Tackling the Impacts of Plastic 22 series, coming in May, and we'll be discussing false solutions. What are some of the current false solutions around plastics and fossil fuel industry, how to identify them, and how to address them. If you have additional questions, here's our information, and we'll be sending that out again. And then thank you for joining us. The A to Z Tackling the Impacts of Plastic. Feel free to stay on additional 15 minutes to ask additional questions or discussion. And you can catch us on Facebook, Twitter, and we have impactsofplastic.com. You can see all of our past presentations and 2 other series that we had. And then I will pass it over to BJ for closing. Thank you.
Yes, I would like to thank everyone from the bottom of my heart for being here tonight. Our lives are pretty busy. Some are complicated. We've got things we have to deal with. There is, oops, I forgot my video. Anyway, yeah, we're real people. We're not professionals. That might be obvious, right? Right now in the world, over in Ukraine, and the things that are going on, I know are affecting people. They're affecting me. They're affecting my family. We're asking a lot of questions. This is one more thing that we have to contemplate, that we have to put effort and time, and change isn't easy, right? Things that we need to do, things that we need to consider, you know, it's going to take our time even more, because whether we're using reusables or trying not to use single use, it's so easy, right? We just toss things in the garbage, out of sight, out of mind, put it out on the curb. But when I was growing up, there was none of this. You know, our milk came in glass bottles, our we return them, even as soon or not as far back when my children were growing up. Even our soda bottles were returnable. We need to stop allowing, we need to stop supporting this culture, this mindset of disposable things and planned obsolescence. That's, engineering failure into everything. I mean, we're talking cars and cell phones, and even our clothing is not long lasting. Fast fashion is another, and that's a plastic thing too. So we need to begin to understand and feel it in ourselves, in our heart, that we are a part of this beautiful creation. And everything we do has impact. We can impact it positively, we can impact it negatively. Like I said, I don't want to hold people accountable when there are other people that should be held accountable. But we also have to, right now, we have to provide, we have to put out, we have to give people grace. We have to be understanding, and we have to just put out the positive vibes, whether you pray, whether you don't, the way you interact with people, the way that you show people grace or show people kindness is so very important right now. And in the work that we do, yeah, tonight we got the question, what are the alternatives? Well, that's coming, but it's actually some of your responsibility too. I know you have ideas. I know there's people around you that have ideas. What Paulita said, work with the people that are trying to change things. And so tonight and all day tomorrow and for the rest of the time that I'm on the planet, I send out good mind to everyone. I send these prayers that you will be blessed, that you will be safe, that you will be healthy. And my good mind also goes out to the people who have caused this, that they will see, that they will change, that they will somehow have an epiphany, or they'll see what they're doing is wrong and they will change. So manifest goodness, manifest positive. I want to thank everyone tonight, my sisters. This is the power of women. This is the power of our time. And I thank you very much. I hope you have a good evening, good rest of your life, and good night. Now I am.
Thank you. For those of you who have more questions to ask, or if you might want to join A to Z Plastics at future endeavors, please stay on. Otherwise, that's the end of our presentation, and thank you so much for taking action. Thank you. We'll be on for about 10 more minutes. You can unmute yourself, and we will put it in gallery view so that we can face off each other.
Peggy, I saw a question in the chat that I'd love to answer, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Somebody asked about pieces of Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, like breakaway bills. I would say there are a number of bills, and some of them are based on Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, and some of them are not, but they're complementary. So some other bills to keep your eyes peeled for is the Plastic Pellet Free Waters Act, which addresses those pre-production plastic nurdle pellets that are spilling into and contaminating waterways. And then another piece of legislation that has been introduced is the Reducing Waste in National Parks Act. So those are two pieces that are really good bills if you're looking for other things that are maybe more specific and less comprehensive. But Break Free is definitely big one.
Great. And you can unmute yourselves now.
My name is Janet Stanko, and I had asked the question about the spin-off bills from the Break Free from Plastic Pollution or other bills. But I'm wondering, is there a focused strategy and plan for how to get forward movement on these bills, especially since we're faced with the November election where we could lose majorities in both houses?
Alexa, can you answer that question? Because I know I can't.
Well, I think Paulita can also answer it, but there has been an ongoing effort to both internally and externally pressure representatives to co-sponsor this act and to pass the spin-off bills. Unfortunately, our situation politically right now is that we have no Republican support for this bill. We don't expect to get Republican support for this bill, but we are hopeful. I mean, I think plastic pollution influences us all. So I don't know if Paulita has anything to add to that, but we just can't shut up about it.
I think that's absolutely the overarching strategy, is we can't be quiet about it. Anything that sees change in national policy has a pretty loud crowd behind it for often many years to make that change possible. It's just the structure of the US policy system. But be loud, continue reaching out. And I think that the more education that legislators get from the public, the better, because I would say going into these meetings, it's such a varying level of knowledge that they have, and often are making decisions that are in conflict with their own values or their own interests, because they don't know the connections between plastics and, like these speakers pointed out, the connections between plastics and climate, or plastics and public health threats. So.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Darshana Gupta. My question is for Vijay. I'm a climate reality leader, and we have chapters in various places like San Antonio, Austin, Houston, and Dallas, and everywhere. So for the Earth Day, we are looking for a good speaker who has indigenous background. So that's why I put the message to her. So is there any possibility that she can recommend or she can come?
I will think about it. Yeah, I'm not sure what my schedule is or what we can work out, but I've got your email, and we can talk. We can email, you send me a message, or we can talk. And there are people in the Gulf, in Texas, in Louisiana, who also have all of this information and more that I can recommend, and I can introduce you if that is if that'll be helpful to you and your community.
Yeah, that is for Earth Day event. We are celebrating Earth Day, and we have so many groups that we are working together. So we just want to have person from your group. You have my email, but I don't have yours. So
we'll send it out with everyone, or I can message you here, but we'll send it out, and everybody's email, so that you can also talk to us. But I very much appreciate you being here, and thank you.
Awesome to be here with you.
Okay, they're really done, Bob. I'll come by.
Awesome to be here with you all on my third consecutive Zoom in a row. I wear several hats, including this one, and I'm campaign managing a great race for a great guy named Dan O'Donnell, who's running in Vista, California. So my question He couldn't be here today, but he will watch this replay. And my question is centered on what solutions you see small cities and local governments being able to pass to help on these issues. Vista, California has about 100,000 people. It's about a couple miles inland from Oceanside, California. California, I do believe, has the ability to pass legislation that can then lead the rest of the country forward, and that's definitely what we want, we hope to do. So just open to solutions and things you would recommend, and we want to follow up on working together to make this stuff happen at the local level.
I could jump in there. So there's so many at the local level, there's a tremendous wealth of options. We have been working across cities and counties for about 2 years now, passing ordinances. They vary so much. Some of the municipalities are passing what are called procurement ordinances, where they phase out the purchasing and distribution of single-use products for all of their government facilities. That's one option that's been pretty popular because it influences what the local businesses wind up doing. It influences what the local constituents also do. We've also seen an uptick in balloon bans, straws upon requests ordinances, polystyrene. So that's also been, a lot of cities are bringing forward ordinances on polystyrene. And then we're also seeing a kind of similar trends even at the state level, in the state houses as well. And then I want to say, we have an Oceana staffer in California. Yeah, we have one in California that does organizing around local municipalities, and she's had several passed recently. Her name is Melissa Morris. So if you want to reach out and like connect, she may already have folks right around you that y'all could get down.
This is Janet Stanko again. I just wanted to say that I'm glad you guys are doing a webinar on false solutions, because it's a thing. It isn't just, you hear about one and you hear about another. They're just coming in every day. They cross my path, and I think we need to really focus.
I'm sorry to interrupt, because we had people in line that had their question. That's okay. I figured you didn't realize that. So
okay, I didn't realize that. I'll stop at this point.
Okay. Cheryl was.
I'm sorry, real quick before all of the speakers go, I just have a tech issue. I did not initiate the recording, and so I can't stop it. I don't know if someone is who started it has like the recording to like their cloud or their computer.
Maybe good to keep going though.
Yeah.
Might as well get it.
I think we're okay.
I just wanted, because I know Peggy was thinking about leaving, and I just wanted to
leave. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah.
Because I had surgery Monday. I'm ready to go.
Yes.
Oh, Peggy.
Sending love to you.
Bye-bye.
And we could edit this before we put it out too, if anyone has any concerns about having your name out there.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. So Cheryl was next, but it looks like, is she still there? I see her. She took her hand down, maybe. So we'll go with Elliot, and then we can come back to you, Janet.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, and and I'm glad there's going to be another one, and maybe I guess that's kind of what maybe I just have to wait to the next one. But I've seen solutions or proposed alternatives and solutions for years, and just a lot of people care just as much. We have an international community, international family. We're all relatives, and a lot of youth, really brilliant young people have won science competitions and stuff. Where is all this stuff? Because there is got to be a solution so that you get a drink, you go out to eat, you're not contributing something for the lifetime for future generations to deal with. Is that a possibility, or does it exist?
It is a possibility. But as Alexis said, you know, these industries, there's many industries that are well sourced, well funded. You know, they get wind of something that, you know, some company or corporation or inventor, and all of a sudden there's you know, there's a policy or a program or, you know, this media to, you know, put it down. So yeah, I mean, there are a lot of different ways. Some of them are very simple. It talked about the local legislation. You know, I always say, look to the past for our future. It wasn't that long ago. I'm not ancient. You know, I grew up, we didn't have single-use plastic, and one like this. But I think we're planning on having something like that. Do our homework, see what we can find, you know, not making any endorsements, you know, directly, but there are things that we can do. So we have talked about that.
Does that answer your question, Elliot? Also, the breakfreefromplastic.org has a tremendous amount of information, and all of us are part of that movement. And it really is the way to connect with people that are all working on a global level around these issues. So just so you know. So we have Pat, and then we have Gail.
Are you there, Pat?
Pat, you want? Can you? Maybe you're muted. All right. Oh,
now
there
can
we
you
go.
hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I apologize. I actually fell asleep during part of the presentation because I'm so tired. But sometimes I feel very discouraged because I look around my house. I've got these curtains that are made out of essentially plastic on my windows. My neighbors, our homes are 20 some years old and they're getting windows replaced. And I talked to the people replacing the windows, and they're putting plastic windows in instead of glass windows. We spent extra to buy an all glass instead of plastic greenhouse because I'm an organic gardener and we don't believe in plastic. But goodness gracious, our glasses we wear on our eyes, our screen protectors against the blue light from computers, are plastic, our printers, our computers are plastic, our, you know, don't use petroleum cars are largely made of plastic. The seats that we sit on are either woven plastic that's a cloth, or faux leather, which is plastic, which makes me sick. I can't be around faux leather. I'm petrochemical sensitive. The sandals I wear are entirely made of petrochemical.
Pat, do you have a question?
Well, how do we break free from all that stuff? The pen I'm writing with is plastic.
We have to stop.
Yeah,
we have to stop making single-use plastics. I mean, I think that's
the thing you're wearing on your head is plastic, I think, and your glasses.
But most new plastics today are single-use plastics that are flawed by design. So the real pollution problem is, not to say that reusable plastics aren't an issue, but the single-use plastics that aren't recyclable are causing our oceans to turn into landfills. And the microplastic pollution in our air and water is from plastic pollution breaking down from single-use plastics. So I agree with you, like one of the petrochemical industry's talking points that plastic isn't everything that we use. Well, they made it that way. They designed the world that way. So the solution is to stop making plastic, and then we can focus on how do we replace these things once at the end of their life, or how do we deal with them at the end of at the end of their life. But I wouldn't blame yourself, because it's not your fault that, or my fault, or anyone's fault that this is the world that we live in. It's been designed this way by the petrochemical industry.
I have an air purifier because the pollution bothers my lungs, being petrochemical sensitive, and it's plastic too. You know, they don't.
It's true.
Can't escape. And my fillings, I got rid of the toxic stuff in fillings, and the dentist puts plastic on my teeth instead, a type of plastic. Thanks.
Gail, you have a question?
Pat.
Thank you, Pat.
Hi there. I think you have answered this a few times, but it's really a big part of why I came to this seminar. And I keep asking about an alternative. And I'm always so surprised that's not a bigger part of this conversation. I mean, even I believe Mary said to look at the Break Free from Plastics website, and I'll do that. I've been doing research on my own. I'm not a scientist, like Andy said, or excuse me, it might not have been Andy. The young man who came on the call earlier said, where are all these, winning plastic alternatives? And I am more than beginning to think that it's because they're not government sponsors. They have to be funded by the public. I mean, the government is not going to back these green compostable packaging. It has to come from individuals. And I am looking for a platform where that can happen, where there will be investors that are not government investors trying to find compostable materials. Yes, we should reuse things, but I've tried to use glass, for packaging, for bringing things around. They're too heavy. There has to be some kind of lightweight material that's going to biodegrade in 3 years. If even it takes 10, if it's compostable, that's a lot better off than a plastic carton that's going to last 100. So
let me show you something. 1 second.
Okay. I live by where they're building the cracker plant, and it's just very discouraging to see 6.5 million tons of plastic, single-use plastic produced. When
we have the solutions to alternative packaging. This is an egg carton. It is made out of recycled paper, and it can be reused and recycled. I have a tomato carton here that I just got from a major grocery chain that was made out of this material, that I was so shocked to see if it wasn't made out of plastic. I had to keep it, but of course I've lost it. So we have the solutions. It's not just one silver bullet. It's going to be many solutions. But you're absolutely right. They need to be funded. And that's something that the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act does, is direct money towards reuse and refill, toward post-consumer recycled content, and away from plastics manufacturing. The only reason that plastic is so cheap on the market is because it's heavily subsidized. So we can fix this with regulatory changes.
We also have to look at where the raw materials are coming from. Like I said in my presentation, when has corporates, multinational corporations, industry, when have they ever showed any restraints? Our land is precious. We need food, we need other. So one of the things we suggest, and we talk heavily about, is rebuilding our communities. The global economy, this globalization has brought us to where we are now. We wouldn't need tons and tons of packaging if we could get the things that we need from our communities or from our region. So, we've got to look at that too, because that has a carbon footprint. I understand packaging and convenience and all that stuff. Like I said, I know we did it a long time ago, and we can redo it. We can sterilize medical equipment, sterilize gowns and caps and masks. I used to do it. I used to sharpen hypodermic needles for reuse. And so I got a turkey for Thanksgiving, and it had 5 different kinds of plastic around it. It had a little thing for back end. It had, plastic to hold its poor little feet together. It was wrapped in 2-3 kinds of plastic. That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Thanks for letting me rant for a minute.
I would this is Elissa. I'm with Sierra Club Ohio, and I would just like to kind of talk about that. There are pockets of communities and businesses who are investing in reusable refilleries, places where you can go and take a glass jar or whatever you want to reuse to fill your laundry detergent, your eye makeup remover, you name it, it's happening. And so I think that one of the campaigns that we're working on here in Ohio is we need to start reimagining how our food is coming to us. So we need to, buy naked fruits and vegetables. We need to use, our consumer power to pressure how our food is being packaged to us. The FDA doesn't have any regulation on what kind of material our food is packaged in, yet we heat it, and it is finding its way into our food that we're eating. And so, I can do this. I have a metal container here that instead of sending my daughter, with a plastic Lunchable, I can buy my ham from the deli counter and ask them, to hand it to me and just wrap it in that paper. And I put it in a bag with the sticker, and I can make my own Lunchable, it takes planning, and it takes some more resources. And, a lot of us here in this conversation are folks who can afford some of these things. And we're the ones who really need to invest our voices and our dollars, to push for these kind of changes and support those local refilleries, and it's also just stop buying. Unfortunately, too much consumption.
Yeah, there was a couple things in the chat, and I've started using them too. Bars for dish soap and shampoo and conditioner, and actually they're better products than what you buy in the bottles. Wrapped in paper, it lasts forever too.
Yeah, I like the bamboo paper towels, and yeah, and the strips for laundry.
Yep.
Instead of the yeah. Is Janet still on? Did you want to finish your thoughts? Let's see her. Thought she was still on. Right.
Looks like
I want to say thank you to. Oh,
no, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to say thank you to the moderators tonight. Thank you, Mary, Elissa, Peggy, for organizing this behind the scenes and putting a lot of work into this. And thank you to my wonderful co-presenters, BJ and Paulita. It's been an honor to do this webinar with you.
Absolutely. It's been an honor to do the planning and the organization and the tons of emails and signal chats. Yes, absolutely.
And Allison.
Allison as well.
Yes, Allison, our sweet Allison.
Yes, Allison is a wonderful from Climate Reality. Do you want to say a few words, Allison, about what you do?
Yeah, hi. I'm Allison. I am an intern at the Climate Reality Project right now, but it's definitely been wonderful getting to work with all of you on this presentation. And it was, super informative, and I think we made a really big impact tonight. So yeah, really happy to work with you all. And I'm glad, hopefully, that we'll be able to see some really good impacts from this.
Yeah, I think that I always think about my plastic less life is a journey, and it's not some place that I got to overnight. And I do have to say that the more you start to dig in, the more I start looking around saying, what else can I eliminate, you know? And so it does kind of get you creatively thinking about alternatives, what you can go without. You know, I challenged myself, you know, to celebrate my daughter's birthday without plastic, and which can be a challenge for little kids. And, you know, we went on a road trip as a family to the St. Louis Arch and used no plastic because we planned ahead and used refillables, reusables. So it is possible. And the, you know, the more you start doing it, the more you kind of figure out like what works for you.
We can find uses for the plastic we already have. You know, I mean, like, I'm a horrible hypocrite. You know, just look around my house, but you know, you know, I bought plastic boxes to put things in because they're, you know, they're waterproof and they're, you know, things don't get in it. I'm not making excuses. It was years ago when I bought these, but I still have them. So not just because you have a plastic monitor or phone or whatever it is, keyboard, just take care of it and hopefully it won't break. Check.
And please, if you have questions, we are connected to lots and lots of different people in different spaces around all of this work. And if we don't have the answer, we will find somebody that has the answer for you. And you know, it's and none of us are, you know, we're just doing this to, you know, like Alyssa was saying, it's not, this is a journey. So we were all on this journey together, and we'll just, you know, just keep plugging away. So thank you all for coming, and we really consider you all family now. You can't get rid of us, so you're part of the A to Z family, and we really appreciate you being here and your feedback, and you know, just feel free to reach out to any one of us, and we thank you all for coming tonight.
Yeah,
Hi there. Can I get in here?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
This is Gordon Draves. One thing that I have found is that the producers make smaller and smaller packages. And, you know, if we would buy the larger size, it is a good idea. For instance, I buy 4 pounds of peanut butter at a time, and I have a wonderful storage container. And it really helps out to have a large container sometimes. So the thing is, you don't have to buy special products that will store things now. All you have to do is go buy a 4 pound peanut butter, a 3 pound cottage cheese, and you have a container that is really wonderful. Thank you to the person who mentioned mycelium. That's what I was talking about. I went to a mushroom club meeting here in Atlanta, and they were talking about making these packing materials out of the mycelium. And it was just a fascinating thing. And I'm not sure if it ever really caught on, or maybe it's too expensive compared to styrofoam. But styrofoam is a very dangerous product. It doesn't take much of a flame to light up a egg carton and such. So they're very dangerous to have in our homes if we're worried about a fire or anything like that. And I mentioned in the earlier in the chat about little cigar butts have the mouthpieces made out of plastic, and of course the filter cigarettes. I'm not sure if that's a plastic or not, but anyway, those last for, you know, like 10 years before they are disposed of. So there are well, not microscopic, but very small items that add to the pollution problem. And one gripe that I do have about another product, and that is making things like gum wrappers that are with aluminum. Why? You know, we have this aluminum forever, basically.
Great, thank you, Gordon, so much. Thanks for sharing. And I guess maybe we'll take one more about Baldonado. About that. I'm sure pronounce that right.
Rachel. I'm Rachel Baldonado from the Philippines. Maybe we can go back to our Filipino culture of buying things in small amounts, thingy. But of course, we will bring containers, storage containers for such. So to avoid extra packaging. So we know for a fact that most of us are low income earner, and we budget